The Crypt interviews in association with Mayo Leisure Point Castle Bar.
You're listening to The Crypt, and joining me on the show now is Dr. Sarah Cleary, the creative director and producer of Horror Expo Ireland, to tell us all about this exciting new event for the Irish horror community. So you're very welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thank you for having me, Rita.
Well, firstly, Sarah, let me congratulate you on being awarded your PhD by Trinity College.
Yeah, it was long enough coming.
A lot of work. Could you tell us a bit about what you researched for your doctorate?
Yeah, so the title of the actual doctorate itself is looking at the way in which the horror genre has been restricted, censored and regulated in response to its alleged effect on children over the last 100 years. So essentially what I was doing, I was looking at the way in which the horror genre has been used as a scapegoat for the last 100 years for a range of social and political issues. Whenever there's a school shooting, whenever there's a Jamie Bulger type murder, the first line of attack is always directed towards horror. And I think that's quite interesting. And I just wanted to look behind that and look at it from the perspective that in itself is a horror story. Mm-hmm. That we're looking at this kind of boogeyman that doesn't exist, trying to affect our children. So that's essentially what the PhD was based on.
That sounds absolutely fascinating, and such a relevant topic, because that's it exactly. Everything's censored down now. But when it comes to indie film, that's where you're getting all the good movies nowadays, because they're not censored. They're doing what they want.
Absolutely, and I think the crux of my PhD was essentially looking at the way in which a lot of these texts are often pro-child, pro-female, pro-society, and looking at ways in which society can better itself. So one of the greatest ironies ever was Child's Play 3 is a pro-child film that tries to teach children ways to overcome their fears. And I think it's one of the biggest ironies ever that film was involved in one of the most controversial murder cases ever. So I think what we need to do is every time we hear of horror or violent video games being used as a scapegoat, we need to take a deep breath and assess exactly what is being asked. So that's essentially where this PhD was going.
Well, you're a very busy lady, because as well as doing your doctorate, you've also produced the Rocky Horror Picture Show for the last 10 years in Dublin.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been a total labour of love for me for the last 10 years. I did a very short stint in UCD many, many years ago when I was in drama soc, and I loved it. And then I noticed that there was a very small gap emerging within the Irish scene for Rocky Horror, having it been performed in Harold's Cross for years. Mm-hmm. I decided to pick up the fish-netted mantle, shall we say, and continue the tradition and give people somewhere to go to celebrate the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
That's fantastic. I'd say it's a lot of fun.
It is, and it's great. The Sugar Club let me away with murder, so the place, we're allowed to trash the place. There's toast hanging from the rafters and people walking around the place with mask and tape, pretty much it. It's anything goes. It's a great fun, great community, and very, very welcoming. It's the type of event where you could go by yourself and walk out the door with 10 new friends. Great fun, yeah.
Well, as we were saying off air, Sarah, the Irish horror community has grown so much thanks to social media, and we've two great events for horror fans at the moment, and that's Horrorthon, which takes place every Halloween, and Screenvention, which had its first event last February. But I believe Horror Expo is offering something quite different.
Absolutely, yeah. I've been involved in the academic scene, conference scene now, I'd say, for about 5 years, and I'm very, very fortunate enough to be attending these great conferences which concentrate on zombies, which concentrate on Gothic literature, which concentrate on a range of subgenres within the horror genre. And I'd come home and I'd tell my horror friends about this, and they'd be like, "Oh my God, you spent 3 days in Montreal talking about zombies," and and I kind of realized that there was a definite gap in the market for people who are heavily interested in the horror scene to actually learn and for them to exchange their knowledge with people within academia, because I find that sometimes horror fans outside of the academic remit tend to be just as, if not more, knowledgeable on the horror genre and the gothic genre than those who dedicate their lives to studying it. So I decided then, looking at the scene and putting together this event, which essentially will bring together both academics and non-academics under the same roof to discuss the range of glorious subjects.
Well, the event takes place on Sunday, October 30th. So could you tell me a bit about the venue?
Yes. So from the bottom up, we really wanted to develop something unique, something that the minute people step through the door, they realize they're not at a typical convention. They realize they're not at a typical conference, which typically both of them are hosted in quite sterile spaces, usually conference centres or usually the prefabs of some academic building that you're allowed rent for the weekend. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to pick somewhere that really had that wow factor and also is indebted to a kind of a fantastical and mysterious past in itself. So we looked at a couple of venues around Ireland and we decided to go with the Freemason Grand Lodge on Molesworth Street, because in itself it is just the most incredible building, aside from its history and aside from its quite often considered controversial past. I thought that it's just a stunning building in itself and a real treat for the senses before we even begin to discuss horror.
What is the running time of the event on that day? When's it start and when's it ending?
Okay, so basically the rundown of the day is guests will be treated the doors will be opening at 2:00. And once guests are registered and they'll receive their wristband and their program of the day's events, and they will and their lanyards, they'll be treated to free tours of the Grand Lodge into all the various different rooms. So even just to have a look around the place while you're waiting on the actual panels to start. Those tours will be conducted throughout the day also. So no one has to stay for a certain panel, or no one has to stay in any particular area. There will be other events taking place, but essentially the bulk of the activities will take place in the Grand Lodge room. And panels will start from 3:00, and there will be 4 panels on a range of horror-related subjects. And then we will have short breaks where there's a bar also in the Grand Lodge for people to go and have a drink and talk about horror. And they'll also be able to talk with the panelists. They'll be roaming around the building that day. So to continue on the Q&As essentially as well. Yeah. So it's quite an organic space. Participants, guests, organisers, presenters, all individuals will be circulating and inhabiting the same space. So it will be quite an organic feel to the whole day's event.
Could you tell us about some of the participants on the day?
Yeah, so basically what I wanted to do is open up a whole range of conversations. So in doing that, I took quite a broad range of individuals. So for example, so we have Stephen Jones coming, who has been editing horror anthologies for years now. He's quite an established member of the horror community in the UK. He's also heavily involved in the Horror Writers Association. He's coming over. We also have Stephenville, who is the writer and director of Ghostwatch, which I think terrified an awful lot of children and adults alike in the 90s. We have him coming over. Then we have a range of Irish directors and writers, and we also have comic book writers, authors, and then we have the Paranormal Research of Ireland, and they're coming in, and we're going to be doing a Q&A session with them, who we're quite excited about.
Excellent.
And yeah, so it's something quite a bit different. I thought that bringing in the Paranormal Researchers Society would add that little bit of something perhaps that is lacking in a typical. It's neither academic, it's neither fan based, and I thought it's just something a little bit different.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a full range of speakers and panelists coming in. Yeah.
And Stephenville Ghost Watch. I remember when I was a kid, I missed it on the telly, and I remember the day after my friend telling me they all thought it was real. And they were all petrified, and they said some of the lads were down behind the couch, and everybody was so scared. And she's going, "It's real, it really happened."
Yeah. But the thing was, they got away. They always got away with it because I think it was ITV or Channel 4, but they did say in the Radio Times drama. So people should have been a little bit more receptive.
Yeah. Now I read also that you have Gallery X who are hoping to do an exhibition at the event. So could you tell me who they are?
Yeah. So Gallery X is an exhibition house in Dublin, and they specialise in the macabre, and they specialise also in kind of dark erotica. And they're going to be presenting pieces from international artists around the actual exhibition, around the venue space itself. We're very excited about these guys coming down because it's an added dimension to horror that sometimes gets slightly overseen. As that, I suppose it's growing now with the resurgence of comic books within the horror community, but sometimes horror art or dark erotica within a more kind of fine art remit sometimes can be forgotten about. So we want to have a chance for our participants and our panelists to have a look and to talk to the various curators of these as well. Yeah,
you're really covering a lot of areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we'll also be finishing up the evening with something that we're very excited about. There'll be a midnight screening of the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
Excellent.
And that's a film I think that often sometimes as well gets overlooked in favour of Nosferatu. And personally for me, Dr. Caligari is my favourite. I love the film. It's a stunning film, but we're giving it an extra special treat because we'll also have this film set to a live original score by Unshaped Form. And these are a musical trio from Dublin, and they are developing at the moment a unique score for Horror Expo.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Excellent. So it'll be a real treat, and that'll be set to candlelight at midnight.
Oh, so atmospheric. That'll be
fantastic.
Yes. I love it. I like the way you think, Sarah. Well, then, speaking of movies, you're also going to be showing some short films as well.
Yeah, so basically, it is quite a mobile space. Nobody is going to be forced to sit through any panel. We understand that perhaps if you're a zombie girl like myself, and not so much more of a vampire girl, or you're not necessarily into comic books or something like that, that you mightn't necessarily be as interested in certain panels. So we do have other kind of activities taking place, and one of them will be we'll have short film screenings taking place in one of the rooms, and there'll just be 10, 15 short films running at about maybe from 2 minutes to 10 minutes. And so there's no real investment needed. Mm-hmm. You can come in, sit down, watch this film, and in your stroll of the actual building itself, it's just another little thing to do while you're there. But speaking of films, then we are very excited to have Fantastic Films down, and this is an Irish production house, and they're going to be showing an Irish premiere, which I'm not revealing any details of until the day. It's going to be a big secret, and that would be a never before seen film going to be screened in the Freemason Grand Lodge on the 30th.
Will there be any merchandise for sale at the event?
Yes, we'll be selling T-shirts, and we'll also be selling just little key rings and bits and pieces, things like that. We actually decided not really to go for the typical stalls. I think it's going to be much more of a visual and much more of an intellectual space, as opposed to the typical conference setting of people selling horror memorabilia and paraphernalia. So we're really just going to concentrate more on the subject of horror itself.
Well, that's it, and that's what's going to make this event different to others. So
yes, absolutely. Yes, and we're also very excited as well, because as I said, it's quite an organic space, and the Q&As essentially are going to be shaped and molded by the audience. So they're going to be the ones to have the opportunity to direct the where the conversation goes to a certain extent. So it really is a space for academic and non-academic fans of the horror genre to really learn and exchange knowledge.
Well, I believe the tickets are limited. Yes,
and this is also going to add to the whole kind of uniqueness of the day as well. There's only 250 tickets available, and these are going to be released through Eventbrite, and they're going on sale at 6 p.m. on this Thursday, the 7th of July. And the tickets are $39.50. So quite a good, considering how much you get, I think it's quite a good deal.
And where then can people follow you on social media to keep up with any updates on the event?
Yeah, so we're on Twitter at Horror Expo Ireland 2016. We're also on Facebook at Horror Expo Ireland, and we're also on Instagram at Horror Expo Ireland.
Excellent. Well, Sarah, thanks so much for joining me on the show, and it's great to see so many new events for horror fans, and I wish you the very best of luck with it.
Thank you very much, Rita, for having us. Thank you.
The Crypt interviews in association with Mayo Leisure Point Castle Bar.